Sunny Side Up and show. I just want to remind you what Center Makor is supported by Combined Jewish Philanthropists, the Federation, Jewish Federation in Massachusetts, and supporters and donors, sponsors like you. By supporting Center Makor, you're supporting continuity of Jewish life in Russian-speaking Jewish community in Massachusetts. Today, I would like to welcome to our show William Hamilton, Rabbi of Congregation Kehillath Israel. Rabbi, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I am delighted to be with you, Vladimir. It's a delight to be with everybody at Center Makor. An honor to share this time together.
Okay, Rabbi, let us start a little bit with introducing you to major community, especially for Russian-speaking community. The KI was a very popular congregation among Russian-speaking Jews who lives in Brookline or Newton or nearby. We did several events in previous years. We know each other with you already for a long time. And you always were welcome to Russian-speaking community inside the KI. But before we will talk about that, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Open what Rabbi Hamilton as a person is. Who are you?
I'm honored. I grew up outside the Chicago area in the suburb of Highland Park, north of Chicago, where the most prominent memory I have of the synagogue of which I was a part is a sign that hung in the front of the building, "Save Soviet Jewry." And growing up in the 60s and 70s in the Chicago area, I was part of a very committed community. And the opportunity to serve the Jewish people is something that increasingly excited me. I went to college in Illinois at Bradley University. I then traveled to Jerusalem for the first time in 1982 for a year, and then in 1987 for a year, studied at the seminary in New York. And after 10 years of post-high school education between Bradley University and the seminary, I was ordained as a rabbi in 1990, coming to Massachusetts with my wife, Debbie, first to serve Beth Abraham in Canton, Massachusetts, and then enjoying the tremendous honor to begin serving Kehillath Israel in Brookline 25 years ago in 1995.
And I want to just mention what's by seminary, you mean Jewish seminary?
Jewish seminary, Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, right across from Union Theological Seminary, which is Protestant. Jewish Theological Seminary, the center of the worldwide conservative movement. And that is where I trained between New York and the campus in downtown Jerusalem.
In your childhood, how did you like to be in synagogue, Hebrew school, all other stuff what Jewish kids must do in the United States?
I loved the peer group that I came to enjoy as a teenager. Of course, I did all of the things that one had to do growing up. I was in school. I became bar mitzvah, 1975, and I have a very vivid memory that I have not often shared, and I'm delighted and honored to share it with you, Vladimir, now on this broadcast. When my congregation, the congregation in which I was raised, was experiencing challenges and not treating its rabbi all that well, we went for a couple of years without a rabbi. And I'll never forget one very specific story. I was playing catch with a football outside the synagogue in the parking lot. And we were throwing the football around, and we were getting kind of close to the windows, the stained glass windows of the sanctuary with the football. And after 2 years without a rabbi, a car drove up and parked close to the synagogue in essentially what is the rabbi's parking space. And out got the new rabbi. He walked out of his car. And I expected the new rabbi to say, hey, watch out. You're getting kind of close to those stained glass windows with the football. But instead, that rabbi took off his jacket, loosened his tie, and began to play catch with us.
Wow, cool.
And that moment was a very, very powerful moment for me that I've never forgotten about what it can mean for a rabbi to relate to young people that way. He continues to be my rabbi. His name is Bill Lebo. He and his wife Beverly live on the Upper West Side of New York. It so happens that he became a vice chancellor at the Jewish Theological Seminary when I was in my rabbinical studies. So he actually came from our Highland Park outside Chicago community to New York while I was actually a student there. And he was under our chuppah at our wedding, and we remained very close. So the influences, the peer group, the rabbi, and the broader community of commitment, Jewish commitment, was, all of those influences were very powerful on me growing up.
I see. And then actually you find your idea of become a rabbi finalized in your mind when you decided what this is really your time or your path in your life.
It's a great question. I think it actually had been in my mind from the time I was very young, because I enjoyed Judaism. I loved helping people, and I felt that the teaching that I was receiving inspired me in ways that I felt it would be a very, very beautiful thing for me to be in a life of service, trying to do the same thing for others. I think it became more clear when I spent my junior year of college, not in Peoria, in the heartland of America, but in Jerusalem. And when I began to study the sacred texts of our tradition in a way that found ideas, Jewish ideas, dancing in my head.
Is it was first time when you came to Israel?
That was my very first visit. And in fact, my very first visit to Israel was in June. It began in June of 1982. 2 weeks after the beginning of Operation Shalom HaGalil, the first Lebanon war. Mm-hmm. And I remember landing. It was actually the most peaceful year Israel has ever known. And the reason for that is simple. It is 5 years before the first Intifada. So there was no Palestinian issue per se at all. In fact, when people talked about Palestinians, they were still talking about Jews back then. Yep. And the idea is that we were able to enjoy an entire year without a single pigua, a single terrorist attack. And the reason for that was that Yasser Arafat and the PLO, as they identified in those days, were chased out of Lebanon and sent into exile, I believe, to Tunisia. And so there was absolutely no violence in Israel the entire year, and there was no intifada, internal terrorism of any kind. So I look back at that time as a kind of a romantic period in Israel's young history as pretty singular, because I landed in June. I spent 13 months there, and it was an extraordinary moment when I gained fluency in Hebrew, I gained fluency in Israeli society, and I fell in love with Jewish texts. And it was at that point that I really decided to devote my life to becoming a rabbi.
You know what, another question a little bit about Jerusalem. Actually, my first trip to Israel was in March of 1993 with a group of Jewish leaders from former Soviet Union, from Ukraine, actually. And
yes.
It was when we on the very next day came to visit it Western Wall, wall, Wailing Wall. I prefer Western Wall.
Yes.
It was strong rain pouring, like really strong rain. And at the moment when I came first time, I touched the wall. It's like all gone for me. No rain, nothing. I was really alone and didn't feel anything. Actually, did you have any special feelings when you first touched Western Wall? The wall.
Well, I'm glad you're asking. Thank you for sharing your story, Vladimir. It's very powerful. So I can't remember the first time, but I can tell you many times since. My second year living in Jerusalem, I lived in the old city, the Jewish quarter, and out my window of my apartment was the Western Wall. Right there. The very first time I was there, I'll never forget, I woke up in the morning, I put on my tefillin, and I thought for a moment about which way to face. And then I looked out the window, and it was very clear. So my favorite story about the Kotel, about the wall, is there is a tradition that actually these days is very easy to sustain, but in those days was a little more rarefied. This is the beginning of the first Intifada, actually, was when I was in Jerusalem, in the old city, in the Jewish quarter, and in 1988, and it was February of 88. The tradition basically is that the Kotel, the Western Wall, is never left alone without a Jewish presence since 1967. Yeah. There's always a Jewish person there. So it was February, snowy night. The limestone in Jerusalem, in the old city, is very slippery when it's snowy. And I couldn't sleep, and it was about 3 a.m., and I went down to the wall. And I went inside the section underneath where it wasn't snowing on me, so I could also get a little out of the wind. And I began to pray Tehillim, Psalms. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happened when I was there is that there was another gentleman, Haredi, who was sitting at a chair not far from where I was, and he was praying, Oili, shecharvu et beit hamikdash, oili, oili. Woe is me that the temple was destroyed. He prayed that way for a while. I'm praying my prayers, he's praying his. All of a sudden I hear the screech of the legs of the chair on the stone. He kicks the chair back from where he's sitting. I look over and he points to the wall, and I nod. So now he goes away and he leaves to go back home. And now I'm the only one who is providing companionship for the wall. I'm the only Jewish person there. And I continue to pray, but I feel it very, very powerfully. And then about 25 minutes later, a bunch of young Hasidim, Bocharim, dance down, and they are now there with me. And then I leave. So it was a very, very powerful moment to not only experience the wall, which I did daily, because every time I came back to my apartment, I was there. It was my front, almost like my front yard. I tried never to take it for granted. It's hard with familiarity.
But for 30 minutes, almost 30 minutes, you were alone. You were guarding the wall.
Yeah, it was very, very significant for me, and so I've never forgotten that moment. So I have very special memories of the wall because, again, I lived there for over a year, right in front of it.
Oh, Rabbi, tell me, please. Do you feel like you, two questions in one. Do you consider yourself funny and cheerful person, or just like maybe very serious and strong person? And actually, what is pros and cons for Rabbi's work?
The pros and cons of what?
Of Rabbi's work.
Oh, okay. I consider myself profoundly blessed. I do consider myself a cheerful person. I like to believe that I believe very strongly in applied hope. That's not necessarily an optimist or a pessimist. It's somebody. Optimists and pessimists are the same because they sort of both believe that fate is going to be a certain way. Applied hope means that I have something to do with shaping positive outcomes, the notion that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. And I love what I do primarily because every day what I practice is very proximate, very close to my higher purpose. I think anybody who can be in anything she or he does where they find that what they're doing and why they're doing it are really intimate on a daily basis, that individual is going to feel fulfilled, happy, productive, and that's what I feel. I am profoundly blessed to be part of a community that consistently reminds me why we're doing what we're doing, and to be engaged in that practice of it on an ongoing basis is very faith warming for me, very inspiring. I get that inspiration from three things, just to be clear, from my experience with the created world. I'll go for a walk. I'll experience it in the way that God's created world exists and the way I meet that world on a reliable basis. I experience it through study of sacred text, and I experience it through works, through deeds and actions. And all three of those things regularly make the needle that may be on empty in terms of the fuel tank go to full.
Very great answer. Rabbi, I would like to continue our conversation about you and your family a little bit. Again, not like we all spoke already about your family, but your family. Usually people think that you are related to famous Alexander Hamilton. Is that so? Is this your family really descendants from Alexander Hamilton, the creator of banking system of the United States?
I am in no way related to that Hamilton. My name Hamilton comes from a much more quaint story. I learned it when I was little. My father's father grew up in Zhytomyr in Eastern Europe, right? And Ukraine, exactly. And he was born in 1899 in Zhytomyr, and he did everything he could to assimilate, short of adopting a different religion. When he was a teenager, he left his tefillin in London, picked the most secular, proper English name he could find, Hamilton, and reassigned his birthplace and birth date. So he went from being Jaime Kushner, born in Zhytomyr in 1899, to Fred Hamilton, born in London in 1900. And my father was born with that name. I was born with that name. And short of churning it back to its original Kushner, it's been a privilege to continue to carry it on. No relation to Alexander Hamilton.
Okay, that's nice. Kushner to Hamilton. read about quite lots of stories when Jews came from Russia to America, and they wanted to abandon any association of them with their Jewish past in Russia and the Russian Jewish names, let's say this way, and try to get like a Greenberg become Green or something like that, and lots of English name appears. Well, that's a cool story. I didn't know what you're from Ukraine. Actually, you know, you can consider yourself as a Russian Jew.
That would be a deep honor.
Okay. Now, Rabbi, tell me campus where you invited Center Makor 5 years ago. It's already that long time. How's the idea of Kehillath Israel turning to campus instead of being like one solid congregation become union of many different congregations, Minyanim, some organizations like Center Makor or Yachad? How it's happened, how it started, whose idea? I hope it's your idea.
It was an idea that many of us developed. I drove forward for sure, and I'm grateful for an opportunity to share its origin and design. We approached our centennial as a congregation a decade ago, thinking about how we would be a resourceful, compelling, positively influential community in the ways in which our forebears brought a life of service to the Jewish people 100 years earlier, 90 years earlier, effectively. There were two projects that were integral to KI in the first 100 years. The first was absorbing the immigrants. The second was educating their kids. The third project took a little longer to develop, and I can say that it is to deepen Jewish commitments that get activated in ways that make goodness attractive in the world. And we recognize that advancing that project is something that we share with many other organizations, many other institutions, many other communities and kindred agencies. And we feel that there is a tremendous amount of duplication, overlap, inefficiency, inability to optimize what it is that we're all trying to do for our constituencies. And so we made a choice. It was a conscious choice, not so much in a building. The building is the campus, you're correct. And the vision goes so much more beyond the campus, because the campus is a vehicle for being able to deliver and share and serve and learn and grow and celebrate Jewish life and Jewish values, those commitments that get activated, that generate goodness in the world as authentically committed Jews. That's an endeavor that we very much want to share with as many as we possibly can. And we feel that it will better serve, and we feel that it is a model very much for the future. And the last thing I'll say is that we made it by choice, not by need. We could have easily continued as many congregations doing our thing, advancing our membership, building our program, serving the people we serve. But we felt that the legacy of what we inherited with very, very effective leadership from Kehillath Israel, certainly the first 60 plus years of the congregation's history deserved something dynamic and compelling that looks around the corner and figures out ways in which the Jewish people could be served more effectively, helpfully, in a way that not only exists with all of our partners, extraordinary partners like Center Makor, but also even exists bicontinentally. That is the way in which we resource Israel and Israel resources us because of the number of people who come through. That is also an aspect of it. So the campus piece is a manifestation of the vision, but the vision itself is the third project in a 105-year history of the congregation that we're thrilled and honored and moved to have so many minyanim agencies, organizations like Center Makor elevating to embrace and move forward together with us.
Okay. Very strange question. I know congregation has 100 years of history, even 105 right now. It always was a striving, good, standing congregation in most cases, in most years, let's say. How psychologically it was changing from being sole owner of the building, congregation, all in one, right now sharing with 8 different partners, plus other small groups who coming in. It's like, from make last example, because my grandfather, after he returned from World War II to Kiev, he received, as a government worker, he received a big apartment. And he decided that he cannot live only with his family. And he gave up half of the apartment to other people. It's like from independent apartment, he became a communal apartment. He has the same story. He become a communal place.
Right. I mean, I think the major distinction for us is to make it more communal and to create an ecosystem where that generates everybody doing more and better what they do. The uniqueness of our model is that Center Makor remains Center Makor. Mishkan Tefillah remains Mishkan Tefillah. New England Yachad, Minyan Kol Rina, Minyan Shalem, Washington Square Minyan, To Life Communities, etc. Base National, one of our newest partners, from which we have Base Boston of KI, right? All of these projects are unique and retain their integrity because they serve very, very well who they are reaching, and hopefully them and beyond. And that we choose to pool resources when it makes sense. It may not make sense to everybody all the time. Some people, some of the time, other people, other times. But it's a very nice dynamic where people pick and choose when they want to be integrating everybody in an experience and when they'd rather have it just themselves. Center Makor is interesting because you bring so much to the campus and so much to the community that is very special and that is very inviting of everybody. And because you speak Russian as well as English and Hebrew, you are able to determine pretty clearly when you are programming primarily for your community and when you are programming more for the greater community where you want to have as many others participating in. And that's simply based on language choice, right? When you choose to put on education program in Russian, you're obviously going to speak
In Russian.
to people who are fluent in Russian. When you do what you do in English, which I know extensively you do so well, then the message is very clear that it's for everybody on the campus, right? But everybody does that. Every organization does that, and that's something that we're very proud of, because it's very different than other models that exist around the Jewish world. Other models see mergers, and they see a big cineplex phenomenon, like with many different movie theaters and many different experiences, and they frame it that way. That's not what we are doing at all. What we're doing is trying to strengthen Center Makor, to strengthen each of the various organizations, and we believe very much that when each of us is doing better, then all of the boats, the tide rises for everybody.
Yes, and I want to a little bit continue on that. Yes, because together you have more power and possibility to do greater things. Like, for example, together we are running better Seder or Purim celebration or any other event or prayer or book or this prayer is easy. Makor is not assisting during religious services and happenings by organizing after parties. Mostly, or everything for that party.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's been terrific. It's been a real gem and gift to the community. Center Makor is in so many ways. It helps make the community sparkle in very, very special ways. And your leadership, Vladimir, is obviously at the heart of that. And so it's the subject of our deep appreciation and affection.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. But my question, next question, what I want to discuss with a little bit, that's, they have right now two parts of community, like in general, here, everywhere in the United States, where big cities, big population of Russian-speaking Jews and English-speaking Jews. Often there is very low amount of Russian-speaking Jews joining synagogues or temples, put it this way, or shuls. On cultural also, they are not very much going to big cultural Jewish events or organized by, let's say, mainstream Jewish community. They're coming to smaller Russian-speaking events, for sure. But mix them together in the one event, it's still like big issue and big goal. And Center Makor was when we found support from Kehillath Israel, moved exactly to that direction. Integration, not assimilation, not acculturation, nothing else, but integration. Real live integration between people of two different cultures, but all at the same time, one big culture, Jewish culture.
Yes.
What do you think on ways of how to proceed more successfully with such integration and bring these two parts together as a one Jewish community, not separate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will just say a few things by way of the Russian Jewish community's influence, and it's mighty on the Jewish people today. I don't think people fully appreciate it, not because they're not being generous, but because we tend not to notice these things. So among the most significant contributions of the Russian Jewish community to the Israeli Jewish community, for instance, is the leaping way ahead in the realm of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Mm-hmm. It's inconceivable that Israel becomes the startup nation it becomes without the aliyah from the former Soviet Union. If you look at the most dynamic Jewish engagement in the world today, it comes from Russia in the form of Chabad.
Yeah.
And the way in which that has affected the Jewish world is Lubavitch, etc., is extraordinary. And lastly, I would say in terms of a recognition of how to deal with threats and danger, the Russian Jewish community understands this much better than the American Jewish community. Russian Jewish community understands the importance of Jewish culture and the variety of experiences from literature to dance to drama to the arts to all manner of things. And I think that by and large, the North American Jewish community has had a very, very different kind of experience. It goes back to my name being Hamilton, right? Because my name is Hamilton because American Jews came to make their Judaism disappear. Russian Jews had that forced upon them under the jackboot of communism and of the Soviet Union. And so Russian Jews come curious, interested, open in ways that now, maybe by now, North American Jews are finally starting to come back, curious, open, committed. So I think what's interesting, I know it's theoretical, and I'm happy to get practical, but I think that people see things. You look at America today, and I'm not going to get political, I'm just going to make a point. People think that people have different ideologies and different beliefs. I think that's true. And I also think it's true that they have very, very, very different experiences. It's not just that they have this strategy or that belief or this conviction or that idea. It's that they have radically different experiences. I'll give you a quick example. People who won't listen to public health counsel today about wearing a mask, right? For the COVID, right? Wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Well, some people say, well, why won't they listen? I don't know. I happen to think it's a good idea to listen. And I also have to realize that if I live in this country and have had family members addicted to opioids for 10 years, it's a legitimate question for me to ask, where was public health on that?
Before.
Why? So the point is, my experience is a very different experience with public health officials because of having to, God forbid, bury a daughter or a son from overdose and other sorts of things. So people have different experiences. So now come back to Center Makor, Russian Jewish community integrating more with KI and the campus, North American Jewish community. I think we each have gifts to bring based on our experiences, based on the things that we uniquely have, our talents, our gifts, our proclivities, our strengths. And the more we pool them, the better. And I simply brought the initial examples. And by the way, I will give one more example. Because of the third example I gave of the Russian Jewish community's influence on worldwide Jewry today, knowing what threats look like and how real threats are. What's interesting is that therefore, the support for the Zionist project and the support for Israel and the support for loyalty to the Jewish people is extremely high and beautiful among Russian Jewry. It's in a very, very different place
because we
than...
feel, we feel more like Jewish nation, not Jewish religion.
Well, right.
That's
and
difference.
But it's also true. Look, I mean, the Judaism invented the Jewish religion in the postmodern period. Jews were a peoplehood all along. We were ethnicities, we were tribes, we were cultures, we were all kinds of things. And right, it's fascinating, by the way. I'll give you one example. If you do a chart, Avram Infeld came and spoke to KI on Shabbat a few years ago, and he said he does apples, bananas, oranges. Mm-hmm. And then he'll say, Jew, blank, blank. If he's doing it in America, it'll say apples, bananas, oranges, Jew, Christian, Muslim. If he does the same exercise in Israel with young people, it'll say apples, bananas, oranges. It will say Jew, Arab, mm-hmm. right, a different ethnicity, right? If he does that exercise with Russian teenagers, Russian Jewish teenagers, they are talking again about different national ethnicities, right? Right, from the Ukraine or from all the various different sort of groups. So the point is that what we consider the American Jewish experience turned Judaism primarily into a religion. It's always been a people. And of course it always has had religious components too, but let us not forget that we were a people that came out of Egypt. We belonged before we knew what to believe or how to behave. Egypt, the exodus from Egypt proceeds by 7 weeks, Mount Sinai. And it's not until Mount Sinai that we learn about God and all of the practices and the norms, the behaviors and the beliefs. But the way Judaism is constructed and designed is for belonging first.
Yes, absolutely agree with you on that. But I think there is also what Russian community, Russian Jews can teach socially. American, let's say American Jews, because we're all Americans right now. And Americans can also show more of American Jewry ways, which also very great and have long, almost 400 years of history. Also long story. And much of them together could really bring new spark, I believe, in Jewish life for everybody. Because our kids already more speak English than Russian. They know more about maybe establish what their synagogues and Jewish life when their parents are. Because parents were absolutely for 70 years cut it out from Judaism completely in like 90% of Jews. Here it was different. In every way in the world it was different. I think that could bring new integrity, new push to life, and especially for post-Soviet Jews, like Russian-speaking Jews, because I think it could save Jewish life as a Jews, not just American. I hope you agree on that.
Yeah, yeah. I also would point out that finally that Russian Jewry has been the most nimble, meaning that if it weren't for Russian Jewry, there wouldn't be the Zionist ideas,
There will be
that
no Israel.
led to the aliyot, the first aliyot to Palestine, the very end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. Everybody was coming from Eastern Europe and Russia. And if it weren't for Russian Jewry, there wouldn't be American Jewry either, right?
Yeah.
Because the German Jewish, the Western European Aliyah, or whatever you want to call it, migration to America, was in the middle of the 19th century. But the vast majority of American Jewry, again, came, like my grandfather, from the Ukraine or from other places beyond the Pale. So the idea that people often don't appreciate is how dynamic over the last 150 years the Russian Jewish community has been for the worldwide Jewish people. And by taking it forward to this kind of integration, the way we are together, we'll see that dynamism flower even more.
Great. Rabbi, we almost came to the end of our conversation. I want to continue, but unfortunately time is time. Couple words very simply. These challenging times, as a rabbi, your advice to all people, Russian-speaking Jews, English-speaking Jews, Hebrew-speaking Jews, and just to people, for everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate, Vladimir. First of all, thank you for this entire visit. It means a lot to me to share it with you, and it's an honor. Secondly, I would say that the most important thing we can do is to be careful and kind. I think that one of the most important dimensions of public health is the public part. The premise of public health is that when we act, we do not only act for ourselves. Our actions affect our neighbors and total strangers we never will meet. And Judaism has experience with this. I'm not sure contemporary self-interest does, because I think people very often are very, very focused on how it is going to go for me. But one of the most important lessons we can teach is that being careful with ourselves and for ourselves is something we do for ourselves, but being kind, in addition to being careful, that is where we ultimately bring the dignity, the goodness, the sense of purpose to what it is we're doing daily. So my prayer and my hope for us all is that as we continue to make our way through this summer, day at a time, week at a time, and look forward to Elul and the 40 days that will lead from the 1st of Elul all the way up to Yom Kippur, that we think very, very carefully about not only our own efforts to improve and stay well and stay safe and live purposefully, but that we redouble our efforts to do what we do for the sake of others and for the sake of that kindness, because that will be the ultimate measure of how we come through this challenging time. Care, carefulness, kindness, and looking after others.
Like
that is my prayer and my hope for us all.
Great. It's like, after all, we're all human beings. It's what's uniting us in the hard times. We need to support each other.
That's it.
The very last traditional question of our program. I hope you prepared.
Scrambled.
Okay, what is your preferred recipe of fried eggs?
Okay, normally I would have the scrambled eggs, but the truth is that that doesn't work in the program. I understand. So
Yes.
I also like, over easy eggs, I also like a nice lox onion omelet as well.
Mm. And would you put milk or what in the omelet?
In there, little milk, but also some other flavoring as well. Sometimes some green onions, sometimes some cinnamon, other things that actually make it sweet. I like the sweet as much as the salty when it comes to the eggs, and I appreciate the consistency of that question, my opportunity to weigh in on it, and it should be tasty. I also like the eggs a little drier than some people do. I'm not a big fan of the wet, but a little bit drier as well.
Great. Nice recipe. I like it.
Well done.
We will try it. Yeah, we will try well done omelet with lox, onions, and tomatoes, and whatever it is in your recipe. Okay, Rabbi, one more time, thank you very much. It's left for me just say one more time what our guest today was a rabbi of congregation Kehillath Israel, William Hamilton, and Center Makor is supported by Combined Jewish Philanthropies, Jewish Federation in Massachusetts. Also, we have big help from Kehillath Israel, and from campus, and from sponsors, donors, and simple people like our audience. If you support Center Makor, you support the continuation of the Jewish life among the Russian-speaking Jewish community. And for that, thank you. Stay safe, healthy, kind, and smile. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Vladimir. Wishing everybody well.